There's a moment in every courtroom that most people miss. It's not the dramatic objection. It's not the verdict. It's the 3 seconds before a lawyer asks a question they already know the answer to, and the almost imperceptible shift in their posture as they prepare to dismantle a witness who has no idea what's coming. Most people think lawyers are just smart, good talkers, aggressive debaters who memorized enough law to sound authoritative. That's the comfortable version of the story. But that's not what's actually happening inside a lawyer's mind. What's happening is something far more interesting, and honestly far more unsettling. The cognitive architecture of a trained legal mind is genuinely different from the way most people process reality. Not different in a vague, motivational poster way. Different in specific, documented, measurable ways that cognitive scientists have spent decades studying. And once those mechanisms are understood, 2 things happen simultaneously. The lawyer in someone's life suddenly makes complete sense. And everything about how that person communicates, argues, and perceives the world clicks into place like a key turning in a lock. Here's what this covers: the real psychological machinery behind how lawyers think, argue, and see the world. The cognitive tools they develop through training and experience. The hidden cost those tools carry. And the single most misunderstood thing about what it actually feels like to operate inside a legal mind every single day. Start with something that looks like a superpower. Lawyers develop what researchers call adversarial thinking, the trained ability to simultaneously construct the strongest possible version of an argument and the strongest possible counterargument at the same time, in real time. Most people can argue one side of something. A trained legal mind is running both sides in parallel, constantly, like 2 separate processors sharing the same brain. This isn't metaphorical. Legal training literally restructures how argument is processed. A 2007 study published in the journal Neuropsychology examined how legal training affects reasoning patterns and found that law students showed measurable increases in their capacity for what researchers called dialectical reasoning, the ability to hold contradictory positions without cognitive dissonance. Ordinary reasoning tends to collapse under contradiction. Legal reasoning feeds on it. Picture a defense attorney sitting across from a prosecutor's evidence file. While most people would read it and react, "This looks bad" or "This looks good," the defense attorney is doing something entirely different. They're reading every piece of evidence as if they were the prosecutor who wants it admitted, and simultaneously as the defense attorney who needs it excluded. Every document is being analyzed from 2 adversarial angles at once. Not sequentially, simultaneously. That's why lawyers often seem impossible to argue with in everyday life. It's not arrogance. It's that they've already heard their opponent's best argument before the opponent has even finished forming it. They are 3 moves ahead because they've been professionally trained to think in moves. But here's where it gets complicated. That same ability that makes them extraordinary in a courtroom creates a very specific kind of relational friction outside of it. Because adversarial thinking doesn't switch off when the workday ends. A lawyer who can simultaneously argue both sides of a legal dispute will automatically, involuntarily, do the exact same thing during a disagreement with a partner, a friend, a family member. They're not trying to be combative. Their brain has simply been rewired to treat every position as a thesis waiting to be tested. Understanding that changes everything about how to interpret a lawyer's communication style. Now, there's a mechanism that goes even deeper than adversarial thinking, and it's the one that's most consistently misread as a personality flaw. Lawyers operate under what psychologists call a negativity bias on steroids. Everyone has some degree of negativity bias, the well-documented human tendency to weight negative information more heavily than positive information. But legal training amplifies this to an extraordinary degree and gives it a specific professional purpose. Lawyers are explicitly trained to find what's wrong, to locate the flaw, the gap, the weakness, the risk. In legal practice, failing to identify a problem is catastrophic. Identifying one that doesn't matter costs almost nothing. Research published in the Journal of Legal Education has documented what's sometimes called thinking like a lawyer as a formal cognitive shift, one that prioritizes risk identification, worst-case analysis, and skepticism as professional virtues. This is not incidental. It is deliberately cultivated. Watch what happens when a lawyer reviews a contract someone else is excited about. The non-lawyer sees opportunity. The lawyer immediately begins scanning for every scenario in which this contract destroys the person who signed it. They're not being pessimistic. They're doing their job at a neurological level. The training has made worst-case thinking their default mode of perception. The hidden cost. That same default mode means lawyers often struggle to experience straightforward excitement or optimism in the way most people do. There's always a part of the brain raising its hand, asking, but what could go wrong here? It's relentless. And many lawyers report, quietly, privately, that it makes genuine relaxation feel structurally impossible. That detail matters, because it reframes something important about the lawyers in people's lives. The skepticism, the reluctance to celebrate too early, the constant, but have we considered, that's not detachment. That's a mind doing exactly what it was trained to do, in a context where training never fully leaves. There is one more mechanism, and it might be the most surprising. Lawyers develop something researchers have called strategic empathy, a form of perspective-taking that is simultaneously more sophisticated and more calculated than what most people experience as empathy. A 2014 paper on negotiation and legal psychology described how experienced litigators develop the ability to model an opposing party's emotional state, motivations, and cognitive biases, not to sympathize with them, but to predict and influence their behavior. In a deposition, when a skilled attorney asks a question in a gentle, almost sympathetic tone, leaning forward slightly, voice softened, they're not being kind. They're deploying a precisely calibrated emotional signal designed to lower the witness's guard. They have modeled exactly what the witness needs to feel in order to become more forthcoming. And they're providing that feeling on purpose. This is chilling when framed as manipulation. But here's the reframe. Strategic empathy also means lawyers often understand the people around them, their vulnerabilities, their needs, their motivations, with startling accuracy. The same tool that makes a lawyer formidable in adversarial situations makes them extraordinary at reading rooms, navigating difficult personalities, and identifying what someone actually needs versus what they're asking for. The person in someone's life who seems to always know exactly what's really going on beneath the surface of a conversation. If they're a lawyer, that's not intuition. That's decades of trained cognitive modeling made automatic. Here's what all of this adds up to. The lawyer's mind is not simply a smart mind. It's a mind that has been fundamentally reshaped by a profession that demands simultaneous contradictory reasoning, systematic worst-case analysis, and precision emotional modeling, all deployed under high-stakes conditions, often daily. That reshaping doesn't produce a personality type. It produces a cognitive architecture, one that is genuinely powerful. And one that carries genuine costs the person inside, it rarely gets to name out loud. The adversarial thinker who seems impossible to argue with isn't dominating, they're processing. The pessimist who won't let anyone celebrate too soon isn't joyless, they're protecting. The strategically empathetic person who always seems to know more than they're saying isn't cold, they're reading constantly because that's what survival in their world required.